Reddit, regardless of your opinion of the occult or supernatural. What is the most downright creepy or inexplicable thing that you've ever experienced? Many years ago, my husband and I were living on the upper floor of an old house in Minneapolis that had been converted into a duplex. I have always had trouble sleeping and was sitting up late reading after he went to bed, and I heard someone walking up the back stairway. You could access the lower duplex, our duplex, and the attic and basement from the back stairway. The footsteps went past our door and continued to the attic, and I could hear someone messing with the doorknob. Then the footsteps went back down the stairway, then came back up. I woke my husband up and he could hear them too. He wanted to go look, but I insisted on calling the police. In the meantime, we heard the footsteps walking across the attic, then they stopped. The police checked it out, found nothing, looked all around the backyard, and found no evidence of anyone walking around. The back door and the attic door were both locked, and it had recently snowed out, and there were no footprints in the snow. No wet shoe prints on the stairs. It's the only thing that ever happened while we were there. Driving down a street, middle of the day, I checked my rear view for traffic behind me and saw a hand reach up in the back seat. Almost jumped the curb when I swerved out of shock, looked around to an empty seat. I pulled into a parking lot to confirm that I couldn't have seen anything. Not only was the backseat empty of people, but no loose items either. No events in my life around this, no deaths of family or friends, and nothing that I could find out about the spot on the city street that was significant. Here's one that happened to me a few months back. It was a nice Monday evening and I was finishing up vacuuming my house, where I live alone. I carried the vacuum through the hall to the spare bedroom where I put it away, grabbed a duster and started dusting. Now, in the closet, there is a hatch in the ceiling that leads to, I presume, some sort of insulation space or pipe access or something. I've always kind of wondered, mostly as a thought experiment, whether somebody's been hiding up there, only coming out at night. It would explain some weird things that happen in my house, like things getting moved around and such. Nothing that couldn't be explained by my own absent-mindedness, but still. This particular day, I decided to shout up at that hatch, see if anybody was really up there. Again, not because I thought somebody actually was, but as more of a joke, to see what happens. Things like, "I know you're up there. Come out." And, "Don't make me come up there and get you." Finally, I finished with, "I'm going to count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I stopped there, decided this wasn't worth it, and went back to dusting. Then I stepped back into the hallway I had just come in from, not 60 seconds before, and there was a playing card. A playing card lying face down on the floor, and it definitely had not been there a moment ago. I picked it up and turned it over. It was a 4. I am still baffled as to how it got there. There's no furniture in that hallway that it could have fallen from. And there's no way I could have missed it. It was bright red, and the floor was more of a grayish blue. It stood out. I even recognized the deck it was from. It was a deck of cards I hadn't touched in months, maybe years, which was sealed inside a magnetic case and also underneath another box, inside that very closet where I had been shouting at the ceiling. I'm baffled. I've gone over everything that might possibly have passed over that spot in the time between when I walked down that hallway and when I saw the card. None of it makes any real sense. I honestly, genuinely cannot think of an explanation. It freaked me out badly enough that I searched the whole house with a weapon, and I started locking my bedroom door at night for about a week. I really don't have a clue. My bed used to shake at night. It wasn't an earthquake or a train passing by. I didn't live that close to the tracks. It was like someone was standing at the foot of my bed and shaking the frame. I got used to it because my parents wouldn't believe me. Also, things would happen I couldn't explain. I had some Simpsons figurines set up neatly on the shelf. I heard them hit the floor, but was too half asleep to care. When I woke up, I saw that they didn't just fall over, they were scattered across the floor like someone violently knocked them off the shelf. This other time, I was watching a movie on one of those old TV VCR combos. I turned it off to go smoke. So, when you power it off, it ejects the tape. When I came back, the movie was playing again. Someone would have had to physically push the tape back in for that to happen. It couldn't have happened on its own. I grew up in Mississippi and we used to go play in the woods off the Natchez Trace when we were teens. The NT was a vital trade route in the 1800s and a lot of bad things occurred there. There was a group of us and we kept seeing the figure of a man watching us from behind various trees. Okay, so it was a guy watching us, right? But this guy kept randomly appearing behind trees, 50 feet apart, and there was no way he could make the distance between them without being seen. A few of us decided to flank him and came up alongside. There was nobody there. We promptly got the flurbo out of there. I had several experiences like that over the first 20 years of my life in that state. My aunt has a house about 4 hours north of where I grew up. It's a suburb of a major city. Basic neighborhood. 2-story homes. Middle class. Basic. My dad and I used to go up there every year for Thanksgiving and Christmas. I was asleep in the basement bedroom one night and woke up to see a black silhouette leaning over me. It didn't have eyes or any features or anything, but I specifically remember seeing it and starting to panic before it sort of just faded away. A different time we were staying there, I was sleeping in the bedroom at the very far end of the main hallway on the first floor. I woke up one night and had to pee. So I left the bedroom and turned to go down the hall. I looked up and as I did, I saw a black featureless silhouette drift across the opposite end of the hall from the dining room to the living room. I brought it up to my aunt later on, and she said she had seen the same thing before. She said she'd woken up and seen it in the corner of her room before, and that she'd seen it in the hallway too. My dad had also seen it. They never brought it up to me because they didn't want to scare me. I'm sure there has to be some logical explanation for it, but it still creeps me out to this day. In high school, we'd pass time driving on backcountry roads late at night. No booze or Calaxian or anything involved, just chit-chatting and singing along to music or whatever while we drove around. Once when it was just one of my girlfriends and me, we were cruising when we suddenly came up on a girl in the middle of the road. We both saw her and screamed. She was so close to us, she couldn't possibly have had enough time to run out of the way. My friend swerved and slammed on the brakes so hard we wound up horizontal in the street, but when we got out to investigate, no one was there. Total silence, nothing on or off the road in any direction. We were so spooked, we called a friend to tail us all the way home. Over 15 years later, it still scares me so much I get teary-eyed just thinking about it. Every year for several years, during the winter months, we would find tracks in our backyard. Now, just to help visualize, our backyard was tiny as heck, having maybe about 20 feet from the back door, where my bedroom was, to our tiny garage, and a sidewalk's length of path around back that was fenced off. Fenced off on all sides, minimal room for movement, hard for anything not human to get in without a ruckus. These tracks from who knows the flea where that would start in a random spot, come up the 2 short steps to the back door, go back a few feet and just disappear. They just started and stopped with no real trail. We have no idea what was making them, nor how or why they would have just made a few prints in a small radius with no start or end. They only ever appeared in the backyard, in that 20-foot space, not in the front or even the driveway. They looked like they belonged to a deer, but shrunken down slightly, but you'd think a deer would leave more than just a couple tracks in a tiny spot. And then, of course, there's the matter of the fences everywhere and the near impossibility of a deer going up those steps without whacking its face on the door. No one else in the neighborhood had these tracks anywhere around their homes. We lived in a small but lively city with hardly any forestry to be spoken of, and we saw a grand total of 1 deer and 1 rabbit in the 6 years we lived in that house. Neither being anywhere near our home. And if this thing doesn't already sound unbelievable enough, these tracks only ever showed up at night, after it snowed. If it snowed again and covered the old tracks, more would follow shortly after. It would only ever make a single set of tracks, and more wouldn't be added unless the others disappeared. It was almost like this thing just wanted to make sure it had a mark in our yard at all times. And each time, without fail, they came up to the door. Needless to say, it creeped our family the flurbo out the first time around, but after a while, we took to calling it the ghost deer and just let it do its thing. We even looked forward to the appearances every year. No harm ever came of it, so we never really made an honest attempt at trying to see it or understand it. I woke up 2 nights ago, late at night. I didn't know what had woken me, so I just laid there, eyes shut. About 2, maybe 3 minutes go by and I hear, "Mommy," said clearly right by my head. I have kids, so thinking it was my daughter, I rolled over and said, "What?" Nobody was there. I got up and all the kids were asleep soundly. There's no way that anyone could have run out of the room. The door was still shut when I rolled over. It was also definitely a real sound because my son, sleeping in my bed, was startled to the sound. Also, the feeling in my house was horrifying. I don't know what or why, but something was there and I couldn't shake the feeling it was watching me. I went back to bed but did not sleep. Oh, and when I checked the time. 3 a.m. My fiancé and I dog sit for my in-laws and their neighbors every few months or so when they go out of town. When we stay at the neighbor's house, they ask that we sleep in their room because it is close to where the dogs sleep. The way that their room is set up, the large bed is smack in the middle and a closet door about 3 feet to the right. When laying on that side of the bed, you have a clear view down the hallway, which is fairly long. The first door you encounter when walking from the bedroom to the front of the house is the spare bedroom that they use as an extra closet. It is important to note that both the spare bedroom and closet door are always closed and the lights off. Every single time. Well, this particular weekend, my fiancé, who sleeps on the side closest to the closet, wakes up in a panic, looking around, obviously scared. I ask him what is wrong, and he said that he had a nightmare that a man walked out of the closet and then down the hall, partially closing the door behind him. He said that in the dream, he stared at the door for a moment before trying to settle back into bed, only for the door to slowly creak open, and 2 dark hands with long claw-like nails gripped the door from the top and side as it opened. We both look to the closed bedroom door and have a little laugh about the absurdity and such, and he goes back to sleep. I was not long to follow. We both woke up early the next morning. That in itself is unnatural, and the closet door and spare bedroom door were both open with the spare bedroom light flicked on. We were creeped out, but figured that maybe it was the house settling. Odd, we couldn't really figure out the light. The next morning, the same thing happens, except the spare bedroom door is closed, light on. We've dog sat twice since then, but no longer offer to as we've had a few more unnerving experiences, like hearing the clear sound of footsteps walking down the hall, wood flooring, you know the sound, only for no one to be there and the other person fast asleep. I've got goosebumps just thinking about it. As far as I know, nothing bad ever happened in the home, but I still refuse to spend another night there.